Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched Earth grow larger through the main window. After 20 years in deep space, the blue and white marble looked exactly like he remembered. His heart beat faster as he thought about home. "Sir, I'm not picking up any radio signals," Katie Walsh said from her communication station. She frowned at her screens and adjusted her headset. "Nothing on any frequency? That's strange." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the displays. They showed flat lines where there should have been thousands of signals from Earth. Radio stations, television broadcasts, satellite communications, military channels, everything was silent. "Maybe we're still too far out," Jake suggested, but he felt worried. Lisa Brooks, his second-in-command, joined them at the communication station. "We should be hearing something by now," Lisa said quietly. She had been on these long missions before. At this distance, the signals should be strong and clear. Ryan Carter looked up from his navigation station. "Captain, I've got visual on the night side of Earth. You need to see this." Jake walked to Ryan's station and looked at the screen. The night side of Earth should have been covered with the bright lights of cities. Instead, it was almost completely dark. A few scattered lights dotted the continents, but most of the world looked empty. "That can't be right," Jake said. "Check your equipment." "I've checked it 3 times, sir. The sensors are working fine." Ryan's voice was tight with worry. "There are almost no artificial lights down there." Dr. Alex Rodriguez, the ship's chief scientist, ran his scanner from across the bridge. "I'm detecting normal atmospheric composition," he called out. "Oxygen levels are actually higher than when we left. But I'm not reading many heat signatures from populated areas." Jake felt his stomach drop. Something was very wrong on Earth. He thought about the 847 colonists sleeping in the ship's hibernation pods. They had all volunteered to help establish humanity's first colony on another planet. They had worked for 20 years to build a successful settlement on Kepler 442b. They were supposed to come home as heroes. "Katie, try emergency frequencies," Jake ordered. "Send out our identification codes. Let them know we're home." Katie's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Broadcasting on all emergency channels, sir. Sending our mission codes and requesting immediate contact with Earth Control." Minutes passed, then an hour. No response came from Earth. "Maybe there was a war," suggested Amy Collins, the ship's biologist. She had joined them on the bridge when word spread about the silence from Earth. Nuclear war could have damaged their communication systems. "No radiation signatures," Alex replied, studying his readings. "If there was a nuclear war, we'd detect it. The atmosphere looks cleaner than when we left, not contaminated." Jake stared at the growing image of Earth on the main screen. Cities were visible during the day, but they looked empty. No movement in the streets. No aircraft in the sky. The highways had cars on them, but they weren't moving. "Captain," Ryan said softly, "I've located several other colony ships on long-range sensors. They're all heading back to Earth, too. Looks like everyone got the same idea to return home." That made sense. The colonists had planned to return after establishing their new worlds. But why was Earth so quiet? "Sir, I recommend we send down a probe," Lisa suggested. "We need more information before we get closer." Jake nodded. "Do it. Send it to the largest city you can find. I want to know what happened down there." Ben Foster, their technical specialist, launched a probe toward North America. It would take 2 hours to reach the surface and send back detailed images. While they waited, Jake called a meeting with his senior staff. They gathered in the conference room next to the bridge. Everyone looked worried. "Ideas?" Jake asked, sitting down heavily. "Plague," suggested Danny Parker, their security chief. "Something that killed everyone very quickly." "But where are the bodies?" Amy asked. "A plague that fast would leave millions of corpses. The probe should detect them." "Maybe they evacuated," Pete Mason, their linguist, offered. "Some kind of natural disaster." "They all moved underground or to another planet." "With what ships?" Lisa asked. "We took the only deep space vessels capable of carrying large populations. They don't have the technology to evacuate 8 billion people." Jake rubbed his forehead. None of it made sense. Earth looked normal except for the lack of people. The cities were intact. The atmosphere was healthy. But everyone seemed to be gone. The probe's first images arrived 2 hours later. Ben displayed them on the conference room screen. The pictures showed a major city, Chicago from the looks of it. The streets were empty but clean. Cars were parked normally, some with their doors still open. Street lights were working. Buildings looked maintained. It's like everyone just left Grace Palmer, their navigation officer, whispered. More images came in. A shopping mall with merchandise still on display. A school with books open on desks. A hospital with equipment still running but no patients or staff. Everything looked normal except for the complete absence of people. We need to go down there, Jake decided. A small team. Full protective gear in case there's contamination we can't detect from orbit. Sir, I recommend against landing, Lisa said. We don't know what happened. It could be dangerous. We can't stay up here forever, Jake replied. Our families are down there. Our friends. We need to know what happened to them. Danny Parker stood up. I'll lead a security team down. If it's safe, we can bring more people later. Jake looked around the table at his crew. These people had trusted him to lead them across the galaxy and back. They had followed him for 20 years. Now he had to decide whether to risk their lives to solve the mystery of empty Earth. Prepare a landing party, he ordered. Full biological protection. Assume the worst until we know more, and keep the horizon's edge in orbit. If something goes wrong down there, the ship and everyone on it survives. That's an order. As his staff left to prepare for the mission, Jake stayed behind and looked out the conference room window at Earth. 20 years ago, it had been humanity's crowded, bustling homeworld. Now it looked like a beautiful, empty museum. Where had everyone gone? And more importantly, were they coming back? Danny Parker stepped out of the landing shuttle and onto the empty streets of Chicago. His boots made soft sounds on the pavement as he looked around. Behind him, 5 other crew members followed, all wearing protective suits and carrying scanners. The city looked frozen in time. A newspaper lay on the sidewalk with a date from 19 years and 7 months ago. The headline read, Colony Ship Reaches Kepler System. Danny picked it up carefully. The paper was old but still readable. Air quality is normal, reported Carol Hughes, their engineer. She held a scanner that beeped softly as it tested the atmosphere. No dangerous chemicals or biological agents. We could breathe this air safely. Ben Foster walked to a nearby car and peered inside. The keys were still in the ignition. A coffee cup sat in the holder, and a child's toy was on the back seat. Looks like someone just got out and walked away, he said. Amy Collins knelt beside a flower bed outside an office building. Green plants pushed up through the concrete sidewalk. Vines covered the lower floors of nearby buildings. The plants are taking over, she observed. But this much growth should have taken decades, not just 20 years. Danny led his team down the main street toward the city center. Store windows were intact but covered with dust. Inside, they could see merchandise still arranged on shelves. A restaurant had tables set for meals that were never served. This is creepy, muttered Grace Palmer as she recorded everything with her camera. It's like everyone just vanished at the same moment. They reached a large intersection where several streets met. Traffic lights still worked, changing from red to green to yellow in their normal pattern. Cars were scattered across the intersection as if drivers had simply stopped and abandoned them in the middle of traffic. Ben walked up to one of the cars and looked inside. Keys in the ignition, engine off, driver's door open, he reported. Personal items still inside. Wallet, phone, sunglasses? Amy noticed something else. Look at the wildlife, she said, pointing to a group of deer walking calmly down the street. Birds nested in traffic lights. A family of rabbits had made their home in what used to be a busy bus stop. The animals aren't afraid of us, Grace noted. They're acting like they own the place. Danny felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. In 20 years, wild animals had moved into one of the world's largest cities. That meant no humans had been here to keep them away. They continued exploring for several hours. Every building they entered told the same story. People had been there one moment and gone the next. Offices had computers still running with work half finished on the screens. A school had children's backpacks hanging on hooks, waiting for students who never returned. Captain, Danny spoke into his radio. We need to check the government buildings. Maybe we can find out what happened from official records. Jake Morrison's voice came back from orbit. Approved. But be careful. Report every hour. The team made their way to City Hall. The building's doors were unlocked. Inside, they found offices that looked like people had just stepped out for a moment. Coffee cups sat half empty on desks. Computer screens showed emails that were never sent. Carol found the building's security office. Banks of monitors showed cameras throughout the city. Most of the cameras still worked, displaying empty streets and abandoned buildings. I can access the old recordings, Carol said, working at the security computer. Let me find footage from around the time everyone disappeared. She fast-forwarded through weeks of recordings until she found something strange. Here, she said. Look at this. On the screen, they watched people walking normally through the city streets. Then all at once, everyone stopped what they were doing. Not in panic or fear, they just stopped. Then they all began walking in the same direction, moving calmly and purposefully toward the city center. They're not running, Ben observed. They don't look scared or confused. It's like they all decided to go somewhere together. Carol switched to different cameras around the city. The same thing was happening everywhere. People left their cars, their jobs, their homes, and walked toward gathering points throughout the city. Then the cameras showed large groups of people standing together in parks and squares. What happened next? Amy asked. Carol fast-forwarded the recording. The crowds of people stood quietly for several hours. Then as the sun began to set, something impossible happened. The people simply faded away. Not all at once, but gradually, like they were becoming transparent until they vanished completely. That's not possible, Grace whispered. People can't just disappear like that. Danny stared at the screen. Play it again. They watched the footage 3 more times. Each time showed the same thing. People gathered peacefully, then slowly became transparent and vanished. No technology was visible, no machines or devices that could explain what happened. It happened everywhere at the same time, Carol said, checking cameras from different parts of the city. All over the world, people did the same thing at the exact same moment. Ben was examining other computers in the building. I'm finding similar reports from other cities, he called out. Official documents, police reports, news stories. This happened globally. Every time zone all at once. Amy found a printed report on one of the desks. Listen to this, she said, reading aloud. Government teams found underground installations that weren't there before. Large facilities built with unknown technology, all empty but designed to house thousands of people. Underground installations? Danny asked. Where? Amy read further. Locations all over the world. The report says they appeared to be built very quickly, using construction methods beyond our technology. Each facility had living quarters, food production areas, and strange equipment nobody could identify. Carol looked up from the security computer. I found government orders from the day before everyone disappeared. All military personnel were ordered to specific locations. Emergency services were told to prepare for a global event. But the orders don't say what kind of event. Danny spoke into his radio. Captain, we need to find one of these underground facilities. We might get answers there. Jake's voice came back immediately. The other colony ships are reporting the same things from their landing sites. Empty cities, abandoned vehicles, no signs of violence or disaster. But everyone is gone. What are your orders, sir? Danny asked. There was a long pause before Jake responded. Find those underground facilities. But don't go inside until we know more. We need to understand what we're dealing with. As the team prepared to leave the government building, Amy noticed something else in the security footage. In the moments before people started disappearing, many of them looked up at the sky as if they could see or hear something. Their faces showed recognition and understanding, not fear. They knew this was going to happen, she said quietly. Whatever made them leave, they were expecting it. Danny looked around at the empty city one more time. Somewhere out there were facilities built with technology humans didn't possess 20 years ago. The people of Earth hadn't been taken by force or killed by disaster. They had walked calmly to gathering points and then simply vanished. But the biggest question remained. Where had 8 billion people gone? And why had they left no trace behind except empty cities and mysterious underground installations? Pete Mason sat in the underground facility 50 miles outside Chicago, trying to make sense of what he was reading. The walls were covered with symbols and text in dozens of human languages, but the ideas they described seemed impossible. This doesn't make sense, he muttered, pointing at a section written in English. It talks about something called dimensional transition phases and consciousness elevation protocols. These aren't real scientific terms. Lisa Brooks stood beside him, studying the strange writing. What do you think it means? Near as I can tell, Pete said. It's describing a process where humans can move from our normal reality into some kind of higher dimension. But that's science fiction, not science fact. The facility they had found was enormous. Danny Parker and his security team had located it, using coordinates from the government building. From the surface, it looked like nothing more than a small concrete structure, but underground it stretched for miles in every direction. Carol Hughes was examining the technology throughout the facility. "These machines are incredible," she called out from across the room. "The power systems, the construction materials, even the computer interfaces. This is centuries ahead of what we had when we left Earth 20 years ago." Dr. Alex Rodriguez ran his scanners over everything he could find. "The good news is that there's no radiation or biological contamination," he reported. "But the energy readings from some of these machines are off the charts. They're using power sources I can't identify." Amy Collins found living quarters designed for thousands of people. The rooms were comfortable but simple, with beds, storage areas, and basic furniture. These weren't meant for permanent living, she observed. More like temporary housing while people waited for something. Ben Foster was working at one of the computer terminals that still functioned. "I found logs and records," he announced. "But they're written in a code I don't recognize. Pete, can you help me with this?" Pete joined Ben at the computer. The screen showed symbols that looked familiar, but arranged in patterns that hurt his head to look at. "It's like they took human languages and twisted them into something else," he said. "Give me a few hours and I might be able to decode some of it." While Pete worked on the computer code, Lisa led a team deeper into the facility. They found laboratories filled with equipment that seemed designed to study human consciousness rather than human bodies. Brain scanners, consciousness mapping devices, and machines that claimed to measure something called dimensional resonance. "Look at this," Grace Palmer said, examining a wall covered with charts and graphs. "These look like star maps, but they show places that don't exist in normal space." Dr. Rodriguez studied the charts with her. "These coordinates don't match any known stellar positions," he confirmed. "It's like they're mapping locations in some other kind of space entirely." Hours passed as the team explored the facility. They found dining halls where thousands of people had eaten meals, but the food was unlike anything they recognized. Assembly areas where crowds had gathered to listen to speakers, but the speaking platforms had technology that seemed designed to transmit more than just sound. Finally, Pete made a breakthrough with the computer code. "I've got part of it translated," he announced, his voice excited but worried. "You need to hear this." The team gathered around Pete's computer as he read from the screen. "It says the facility was built to prepare humans for what they call the Great Transition. People came here to learn how to exist in higher dimensions while maintaining their consciousness and memories." "Higher dimensions?" Lisa asked. "What does that mean exactly?" Pete continued reading. "According to this, normal human consciousness exists in 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. But they discovered how to expand human awareness to perceive and exist in additional dimensions beyond our normal reality." "That's impossible," Carol protested. "Humans can't just decide to exist in extra dimensions." "Apparently they can," Pete replied grimly. "The logs describe successful tests, humans learning to shift their consciousness between dimensional levels, eventually becoming able to exist primarily in higher dimensions, while still maintaining some connection to our normal world." Amy found another section of the facility filled with personal belongings. Thousands of suitcases, photographs, and personal items carefully stored and labeled. They were planning to come back, she realized. All these belongings are organized like people expected to return for them someday. Ben discovered communication equipment unlike anything they had ever seen. "These aren't normal radios or transmitters," he said, examining the strange devices. "They seem designed to send signals through dimensional space rather than normal electromagnetic spectrum." "Try to make contact," Lisa ordered. "If people transitioned to higher dimensions, maybe we can still reach them." Ben activated the communication equipment carefully. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the machines began receiving signals, not radio waves or any energy they recognized, but some kind of information transmission that bypassed normal physics. "I'm getting something," Ben reported excitedly. "It's not audio or visual, but it's definitely a signal. Some kind of data stream." Pete hurried over to help decode the incoming information. After an hour of work, they managed to convert part of the signal into text and images that appeared on their screens. The message was simple, but shocking. "Returning colonists detected. Dimensional transition successful. Earth population healthy and active in expanded reality. Communication protocols established. Welcome home." Lisa stared at the message in disbelief. "They're still here," she whispered. The people didn't leave Earth, they just moved to a different kind of existence on the same planet. More messages came through the dimensional communication system. They learned that humanity had discovered the technology for dimensional transition during the years when the colony ships were away. Without the most adventurous humans present, those who remained on Earth had focused on inner exploration rather than external conquest. The breakthrough had come 15 years ago. Scientists had learned to map human consciousness and discovered that awareness could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. At first, only a few people had made the transition, but as the process was perfected, more and more humans chose to expand their existence beyond normal three-dimensional reality. The logs say they waited for us. Pete read from another message. They knew the colony ships would return eventually. The underground facilities were built to help returning colonists understand what had happened and decide whether to join the dimensional transition or remain in normal reality. Dr. Rodriguez made another discovery in the laboratory sections. There are machines here designed to reverse the transition process, he announced. At least partially. It looks like people who move to higher dimensions can temporarily return to normal reality if they choose. As if responding to his words, the air in the center of the facility began to shimmer. Slowly, human figures began to appear. They looked normal but somehow more present than regular people, as if they existed more fully in the space around them. One of the figures stepped forward and spoke, though her voice seemed to come from inside their heads rather than through their ears. Welcome home, brave travelers. We have been waiting for you to return. Now you must choose. Will you join us in expanded reality, or will you remain as guardians of the physical world? Lisa looked around at her team, then back at the dimensional beings who had once been ordinary humans. What exactly are you asking us to choose between? The figure smiled. Between evolution and responsibility, we can teach you to exist as we do, perceiving reality across multiple dimensions, experiencing consciousness on levels you cannot imagine, or you can remain physical, serving as our connection to the world of matter and energy that we can no longer directly affect. You need us to stay human? Lisa asked. Not just human, the figure replied, but physically human. We have gained much by expanding our existence, but we have also lost the ability to manipulate physical reality directly. We need those who can still touch matter, still pilot ships, still build and repair and create in the world of atoms and energy. Lisa realized they faced a choice that would determine not just their own futures, but the future relationship between humanity's two forms of existence. The people of Earth had evolved beyond physical limitations, but they still needed physical humans to remain connected to the material universe. The question was, which form of humanity would the returning colonists choose to become? Captain Jake Morrison stood in the facility's main assembly hall, facing the most difficult decision of his life. Around him, the 847 colonists from the horizon's edge had gathered to hear what the dimensional beings were offering them. The figure who called herself Maria spoke without moving her lips, her words appearing directly in their minds. The choice before you is not simple, she explained. Those who transition to expanded reality will gain abilities you cannot imagine. You will perceive the universe across multiple dimensions, understand the connections between all things, and exist beyond the limitations of physical matter. Katie Walsh stepped forward from the crowd of colonists. What would we lose? She asked. There has to be a cost. Maria's expression showed sadness. You would lose the ability to directly affect the physical world. We can observe normal reality, but we cannot touch it, build in it, or change it. That is why we need some of you to remain in physical form. Danny Parker crossed his arms and looked skeptical. So you're asking us to split up? Some of us become like you, and others stay behind to do your physical work? Not our work, corrected another dimensional being who appeared beside Maria. Humanity's work. The physical universe still needs to be explored, maintained, and protected. Without physical humans, entire aspects of reality become unreachable. Dr. Alex Rodriguez had been studying readings from his instruments. I'm detecting other presences, he announced. There are more of you here than just the ones we can see. Maria nodded. 8 billion humans now exist in expanded reality. We are all around you. Though most of us cannot manifest visually in physical space, it requires great effort for us to appear as we do now. Amy Collins raised her hand. What about reproduction? Can you have children in your dimensional state? We can create new consciousness, Maria replied. But these new beings exist only in expanded reality. They have no connection to physical existence unless physical humans help create that connection. The colonists murmured among themselves as they tried to understand the implications. Jake stepped forward to address Maria directly. "You're asking us to become two different species," he said. "Some of us evolving beyond physical existence, others staying behind to maintain our connection to normal reality." "Not two species," Maria corrected. "Two aspects of the same species. Humanity is meant to exist across multiple levels of reality. We discovered this while you were away establishing colonies. But we went too far in one direction. We need balance." Pete Mason had been quietly studying written materials the dimensional beings had provided. "According to these documents," he said, "other civilizations have faced this same choice. Most chose complete transition to higher dimensions. And what happened to them?" Jake asked. Maria's expression grew grave. "They faded from existence. Without physical anchors, consciousness in higher dimensions eventually becomes too diffuse to maintain individual identity. They become part of the background energy of the universe." Grace Palmer looked worried. "So if we all transition, humanity will eventually disappear completely?" "Yes," Maria confirmed. "That is why we waited for you. We knew that only humans who had spent decades maintaining civilization in hostile environments would have the strength to resist the appeal of easy transcendence." Carol Hughes studied the machines throughout the facility. "These transition devices," she said, "are they reversible? Can someone who transitions come back to physical form?" "Partially," replied the dimensional being. "We can manifest physically for short periods, but it becomes more difficult over time. Eventually, the connection to physical reality weakens too much to restore." Jake looked around at his colonists. Many looked tempted by the offer of expanded consciousness and enhanced abilities. Others appeared frightened by the idea of leaving physical existence behind. Still others seemed more interested in understanding the technology than making the choice immediately. "What about a compromise?" suggested Ben Foster. "What if some of us only partially transition?"
"Keep one foot in each reality?"
Maria's face lit up with interest. "That is possible, but it has never been attempted on a large scale. It would require extraordinary mental discipline." "We've had 20 years of mental discipline," Jake pointed out. "Maintaining a colony on an alien world, managing limited resources, solving problems without help from Earth. If anyone can handle existing in multiple realities simultaneously, it's us." Dr. Rodriguez was examining the transition machines more closely. "These devices could be modified," he announced. "Instead of complete transition, they could be calibrated for partial consciousness expansion. People could gain dimensional awareness while maintaining physical form. The risk is madness," warned Maria. "Existing simultaneously across multiple reality levels puts enormous strain on human consciousness. Most people cannot handle the contradictory sensory input." Amy Collins stepped forward with a determined expression. "I want to try it," she announced. "I've studied life in extreme environments for 20 years. I want to see what life looks like from higher dimensions while keeping my ability to interact with physical reality." Several other colonists volunteered immediately. Scientists, engineers, and explorers who had spent decades pushing the boundaries of human experience were eager to push those boundaries even further. But Katie Walsh shook her head. "I want to transition completely," she said. "I want to experience pure consciousness, unlimited by physical constraints. 20 years in space taught me that humans can adapt to anything." Danny Parker disagreed with both groups. "I'm staying completely physical," he declared. "Someone needs to maintain ships, repair equipment, and protect the people who choose partial or complete transition. That's my job." Jake watched his crew divide into 3 groups: those who wanted complete transition to dimensional existence, those who wanted to remain fully physical, and those who wanted to attempt the dangerous path of existing in multiple realities simultaneously. "What about children?" asked Rachel Stone, one of the younger colonists. "If we have 3 different types of humans, what happens to the next generation?" Maria smiled for the first time since they had met her. "Children born to parents in different states of existence develop naturally in multiple realities. They become bridges between dimensions without the strain that affects adults who transition after physical maturity." Jake realized that the colonists were not just choosing their own futures. They were choosing the future evolution of humanity itself. The decisions made in this underground facility would determine whether humans remained a single species or became something entirely new. How long do we have to decide? Jake asked. As long as you need, Maria replied. But remember that other colony ships are returning to Earth. Each group that arrives will face the same choice. The decisions you make will influence all who come after you. Jake looked around at his people one more time. For 20 years, he had led them as a single crew with a common purpose. Now he had to help them decide whether to remain unified or branch into multiple forms of human existence. The choice would define not just their personal futures, but the future of human civilization across multiple dimensions of reality. 6 months later, Jake Morrison walked through the streets of New Geneva, the city they had built where Chicago once stood. But this was unlike any city in human history. Physical humans worked alongside beings who existed in multiple dimensions, while completely transcended humans provided guidance that appeared as thoughts and insights rather than spoken words. The partial transition had worked better than anyone expected. Amy Collins had been the first to attempt existing in both physical and dimensional reality simultaneously. Now she served as the primary bridge between the three forms of humanity that had emerged. The morning council meeting is ready, Amy told Jake, her voice carrying harmonics that physical ears couldn't normally hear. She existed primarily in higher dimensions now, but maintained enough physical presence to interact with normal matter. Jake nodded and followed her to the council building. Inside, representatives from all three human groups gathered around a table that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical humans could touch its surface. Dimensional beings could perceive its structure across higher reality. And those who had chosen partial transition could interact with both aspects. Lisa Brooks, who had chosen to remain completely physical, was discussing maintenance schedules for the arriving colony ships. The Kepler's Dream arrives next week, she reported. They're bringing 600 colonists and requesting full briefings on the transition options. Katie Walsh, who had undergone complete dimensional transition, provided information that appeared as text on screens throughout the room. Her research in higher dimensions had revealed locations of other civilizations facing similar evolutionary choices. There are 17 other species in our galaxy that have reached this point. Her words appeared on the displays. 15 chose complete transcendence and eventually faded from existence. 1 chose to remain purely physical and stagnated technologically. We are the only species attempting to maintain all forms of consciousness simultaneously. Danny Parker, still fully physical and serving as head of security, frowned at the display. What does that mean for us long-term? Are we setting ourselves up for success or just postponing inevitable failure? The answer came from Maria, the dimensional being who had first contacted them. She manifested visually in the room, though Jake noticed it seemed to require more effort than it had 6 months ago. You are creating something new, Maria explained. Other civilizations saw transcendence and physical existence as opposite choices. Humanity is proving they can be complementary aspects of the same evolutionary path. Dr. Rodriguez, who had chosen partial transition like Amy, was monitoring readings from sensors throughout the city. The energy patterns are stabilizing, he reported. Initially, having 3 forms of human consciousness in the same area created dimensional interference. But we're learning to harmonize the different existence states. Jake looked around the room at representatives of humanity's 3 evolutionary paths. The completely physical humans maintained technology, explored space, and interacted with matter and energy. The dimensionally transcended humans provided knowledge from higher reality and helped solve problems that required perceiving multiple aspects of existence simultaneously. The partially transcended humans served as bridges, translating between the different forms of consciousness and helping coordinate humanity's activities across multiple dimensional levels. What about the children? Asked Grace Palmer, who had remained physical and was now helping establish schools in New Geneva. Ben Foster, who had chosen partial transition, smiled. They're incredible, he said. Children born to parents in different existential states develop consciousness that naturally spans multiple dimensions. They don't experience the strain that affects adults who transition later in life. Jake had seen these children himself. They played games that involved manipulating both physical objects and dimensional energy. They communicated through a combination of speech, telepathy, and methods that had no names. Most remarkably, they seemed to consider the different forms of human existence as natural variations rather than fundamental divisions. The real test comes with the other colony ships. Lisa pointed out. Each returning group will make their own choices about which evolutionary path to follow. We need to make sure New Geneva can accommodate whatever combinations they choose. Carol Hughes, who had undergone partial transition to better understand the advanced technology, was working on expanding the city's infrastructure. We're building structures that exist across multiple dimensional levels, she explained. Physical humans can live and work in them normally, while dimensional beings can perceive and interact with their higher dimensional aspects. Pete Mason, still fully physical, had become the colony's historian. We're documenting everything, he said. Future generations need to understand how we made these choices and why. This isn't just human evolution, it's conscious, deliberate species development. Jake walked to the window and looked out at New Geneva's streets. Physical humans drove vehicles and walked on sidewalks. Partially transcended humans moved between normal space and dimensional shortcuts, appearing to teleport from place to place. Completely transcended humans were invisible to normal sight, but could be detected by the subtle changes they created in local space-time. Are we still the same species? Jake wondered aloud. Amy Collins, existing simultaneously in multiple states, considered the question carefully. We're more human than we've ever been, she finally answered. Humans have always been explorers, adapters, survivors. We've always refused to accept limitations. This is just the next step in that same pattern. Maria's form flickered as she prepared to return fully to dimensional space. Other civilizations thought they had to choose between transcendence and stagnation, she said. Humanity has chosen to transcend the choice itself. You have become the first species to consciously direct your own evolution, while maintaining all aspects of what made you successful. As Maria faded from view, Jake felt a presence in his mind, not controlling or invasive but supportive and informative. It was the combined consciousness of the 8 billion humans who had transcended to higher dimensions. They were still part of humanity, still contributing to human civilization, but from a completely different level of existence. The partially transcended humans served as translators and bridges. The physical humans provided the anchor that kept humanity connected to normal reality, and the transcended humans offered wisdom and knowledge from perspectives that physical minds couldn't achieve alone. Status report from the outer colonies, Jake requested. Lisa consulted her communications panel. All 17 colony worlds are reporting successful establishment. The communities we left behind are thriving, and now they're sending their own exploration missions to even more distant systems. So physical humanity continues to expand outward, Jake observed, while transcended humanity explores inward into higher dimensions, and bridged humanity connects the two efforts. Exactly, confirmed Amy. We're not abandoning any aspect of human nature. We're enhancing all of them simultaneously. Jake smiled as he watched a group of children playing in the park outside the council building. Some were fully physical, chasing each other and climbing on playground equipment. Others flickered in and out of normal space as they used dimensional abilities for games that previous generations couldn't have imagined. Still others seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, running physically while also manipulating energy patterns that only partially transcended humans could perceive. They don't see any of this as strange, Jake realized. To them, this is just what humans can do, Amy nodded. They're growing up in a civilization that exists across multiple levels of reality. For them, having consciousness that spans dimensions is as natural as having consciousness that spans time was for previous generations. As the meeting ended and the council members dispersed to their various duties, Jake remained at the window. Other colony ships appeared as points of light in the sky, bringing more returning humans who would face the same choices his crew had confronted 6 months ago. But now there was a model to follow. Humanity had proven that evolution didn't require abandoning previous forms of existence. Instead, it could mean embracing all possibilities. Simultaneously, Jake thought about the title future historians might give this period: the Great Expansion or the Dimensional Renaissance, or maybe simply the time when humanity refused to choose, whatever they called it. Jake knew they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had evolved beyond their original nature, while keeping everything that made them human in the first place. And the best part was, they were just getting started.